Imagine the year is 1908. No, Tesla hasn't graced our roads yet, and yes, people were still getting the hang of horseless carriages. That's right, cars without horses. Shocking, right? But amidst this sea of change, a certain man named William C. Durant had a wild idea. Why not combine multiple car companies into a single mega corporation? Durant, a high-spirited fellow, was the Elon Musk of his time, but with a lot less tweeting. GM started with the Buick Motor Company, and under Durant's leadership, it went on a shopping spree, gobbling up brands like Chevrolet, Cadillac, and Pontiac. Talk about having a big appetite, huh? Now, remember Oldsmobile? No? Don't worry, neither do today's teens. But back in the day, it was the iPhone of cars, stylish, sophisticated, and it played music. Okay, not really. But it was part of the GM family. Growing fast and furious, GM became the titan of the automobile industry. The early days were like the Wild West, but with less horse dung and more engine oil. There were challenges, of course. Remember when Durant was ousted not once, but twice from his own company? Yeah, ouch. And he was replaced by Alfred Sloan. If this was a soap opera, this episode would have been titled The Great Betrayal. And as our journey cruises along, if you're having a blast and laughing at our quirky takes on GM's history, hit that subscribe button. Remember, Wealthwise 84 is where history gets its funny bone tickled. But back to Sloan. The man was an organizational genius. Under his leadership, GM surpassed Ford in sales. Yep, you heard it right. Ford was no longer the kingpin. It was a true David versus Goliath story. If David had an army of cars. General Motors didn't just build cars, they built dreams. The 50s and 60s, those were the golden years, colorful cars, tail fins, and chrome everywhere. If cars could dance, they'd be doing the twist and shout. But no story is complete without some bumps in the road. Just like that pothole you always forget about until, bam, you hit it again. The oil crisis in the 70s, competition from Japanese automakers, and let's not forget that little bankruptcy hiccup in 2009. Yet, throughout its rollercoaster journey, GM has shown resilience. They've innovated, adapted, and occasionally face-palmed. But hey, that's what makes this story so entertaining. Who needs drama series when you have the history of General Motors, right? We talked about the highs, the lows, and the woes. Now let's turn the spotlight to the shining stars, the cars that stole our hearts and emptied our wallets. First up, strutting down our imaginary runway, is the one and only Chevrolet Corvette. Launched in 1953, this car wasn't just a vehicle. It was a statement. With its sleek design and powerful engine, it was like James Bond and Elvis had a car baby. Next, making an entrance with all the pomp and drama of a Hollywood diva, is the Cadillac Eldorado. Introduced in 1952, this car was luxury personified. It wasn't just a ride, it was an experience. People didn't just drive an Eldorado, they arrived in it. Now, who here remembers the Chevrolet Impala? Oh, don't all shout at once. Its debut in 1958 set a precedent for family cars. Roomy, reliable, and rad, it was like the station wagon's cooler cousin. But not all stars were destined for eternal glory. Some, like the Chevy Vega, despite its initial bang, fizzled out like a wet firecracker. Introduced in the 70s, it had its charm, but let's just say, it won't be remembered for its reliability. And then, there was the EV1 in the 90s, GM's early venture into electric cars. Ahead of its time? Maybe. A precursor to the electric revolution? Definitely. It was like the hipster of cars, doing electric before it was cool. But as with any tale, not all was smooth cruising. The 80s and 90s saw stiff competition. Japanese and European cars were on the rise, and GM, well, they had their work cut out. But as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Or in GM's case, what doesn't bankrupt you makes you innovate. The turn of the millennium saw a renewed GM. They began embracing technology, focusing on sustainability, and occasionally looking back at the Vega and thinking, what were we thinking? Let's rewind to the 1920s. GM was not just battling external competitors, but internal strife. The founder, William Durant, was often at odds with the company's direction. Known for his ambitious vision, Durant once remarked, "I envisioned a global corporation that would mold the future of transport." But his aggressive expansion strategy led to financial instability, ultimately resulting in his ousting. It was a lesson GM wouldn't forget: dream big, but drive steady. Enter Alfred P. Sloan, the man who would not only stabilize GM, but make it a global juggernaut. He believed in decentralized operations, but centralized control. As Sloan famously said, "If we're all in agreement on the decision, then I propose we postpone further discussion to give ourselves time to develop disagreement." Sloan emphasized debate, diverse perspectives, and meticulous planning. Now, the 80s posed a different challenge for GM: intense competition from Japanese automakers. It was like David versus Goliath, but where David had a tech-savvy slingshot, GM had to respond, and they did, by revamping their design and focusing on quality control. Speaking of design, a cheeky designer once plastered a mock slogan in GM's design studio during the 80s. "We are not Toyota." A humorous nod to the intense rivalry, but also an assertion of GM's unique identity. The 2008 financial crisis was another hairpin bend. Bankruptcy loomed, and GM's legacy was at stake. It was a harsh reminder that no company, however legendary, is invincible. Yet, with government assistance, restructuring, and a renewed focus on innovation, GM bounced back, proving, as Sloan might put it, that a car company must be elastic, ready to adjust. We're not at the end of our road trip just yet, as we zoom into GM's visionary future. Remember, with Wealthwise 84, every tale is a journey, every car has a story, and every mile has its memory. If the 20th century was about horsepower and chrome, the 21st is all about electrons and autonomy. And no, I'm not talking about a sci-fi movie. I mean electric and self-driving cars. Enter the Chevrolet Bolt EV, launched in 2016. This wasn't just a car, it was GM's statement to the world that they're plugging into the future, pun very much intended. Compact, efficient, and with zero emissions, the Bolt wasn't just a vehicle, it was a revolution on wheels. Now let's talk self-driving. I mean, who hasn't dreamt of a car chauffeuring you around while you catch up on your favorite Wealthwise 84 videos? GM's been investing heavily in autonomous tech, making strides with their Cruise subsidiary. Imagine a world where your car knows the way to the grocery store better than you do. But future isn't just about tech, it's also about being sustainable. GM's been taking strides towards a greener future, committing to going carbon neutral by 2040. That's right, folks. GM's not just changing cars, they're aiming to change the world. Of course, challenges lie ahead. Every road has its bumps and turns. Competition is fierce, with every Tom, Dick, and Tesla aiming for the top spot in the EV market. But GM isn't just another player, they're a pioneer, a trailblazer, the OG of automobiles. So, what's next for General Motors? Flying cars, teleporting trucks, cars that make morning coffee? Who knows? But one thing's for sure. It's going to be a wild, exciting, and knowing GM, occasionally bumpy ride. And that, dear viewers, concludes our thrilling trip through time with General Motors. From its humble beginnings to its iconic cars and its vision for the future, we've covered it all and laughed a bit along the way. Remember, with Wealthwise 84, history isn't just about looking back. It's about zooming forward, laughing at the quirks, and always, always enjoying the ride. Until our next journey, stay wise, stay wealthy, and keep those gears shifting.